Let's look at two operations that you might want to do on your data to both enhance their appearance and reduce the amount of data you're actually manipulating at any given time. I'm actually going to go back to our original downloaded data and open that, and we can view a raster image of some of the data, and recall that when I put a coastline on here, it's in the sensor projection. So let's fix that problem. That is, let's reproject this data in a more attractive map projection. The operation combines not only transforming the data, but we're going to create a new file in the file manager, and so it reinforces our previous discussion about how we save our work, because we will save our work of the reprojected data into its own file. So the map reprojection tool can be found either in the raster reproject menu. We haven't used the menu much because there's generally a button for most of these operations, and sure enough, right here is the little map shaped globe. We click that and we get the dialog for reprojecting our data. Okay, there are 3 sections to this dialog, and a lot of the dialogues presented by CDAS have this sort of sub-category organization, so be aware of that. This first tab or screen is for what are you going to read in and what are you going to write out. So the source data file has already been chosen because that's what we had opened. It turns out if I had multiple files opened, I would need to select one. In this case, I really didn't need to, but normally I would select this and then click the button to bring up the reprojection dialog. Okay, so this is my input, and the output is simply it appends underscore reprojected to the input file name, and that's sort of a good way to label the data file as what it is. It's the reprojected version of this. The important thing here is this output directory. CDAS has shown itself to be a little wonky here, and sometimes the folder portrayed is not at all where you're working, and so be careful to make sure that you've chosen the directory that you want the reprojected data file to appear in. This open in CDAS is enabled because once the reprojection is done, it's simply going to open that file up for us. It just sort of saves a few clicks. Okay. Now we have to review the map projection settings, and really there are only 2 to worry about here, and that is what map projection are you going to use. We tend to use the equidistant cylindrical. It's sort of a rectilinear or rectangular projection. It's equal area, I believe, and it's just a common rectangular lat-long grid projection. The datum is sort of the representation of the Earth below the data, and the most common one used largely in the GIS community. There are quite a few of these, obviously, but I'm scrolling back to the North American datum of 1983. The rest of this is really, you can just take the defaults. I never fool with the validation masking and so on. Okay, so with those 2 things set, we can click run. Now it's going to chart the progress of the reprojection for you, and when it's done, it will announce the fact that it's done. Now, just the act of reprojecting this data has contaminated our original work file. I honestly am not sure why, because we haven't really done anything in it that I'm aware of. But from our previous discussion, this is now a quote dirty file, because and if we were to quit, um, well, for one thing, we would lose the work we just. No, that's not true. I'm not honestly sure why this is claiming to be contaminated, but the important thing is it has created the reprojected file, so we click OK. Oddly, it does not close this dialog as well, so you have to manually close that. But it has added a new file to the file manager. So this really reveals how the file manager is managing multiple files of data. I might have opened them, or I might have, as in this case, generated them from an operation like a reprojection. Okay. Now it's got its own rasters, which are all of the bands of the original file. So if I open the chlorophyll file here, let me see if I can, there we go. If I stretch this over, what you'll see is the original file is listed here. The new one is listed here with NC reprojected. It's not dirty because it just got written through the act of creating it. So it's all up to date. If I double click a band here, I get the data in that band. And let's quickly throw a lat long grid on that. And look at there. It's a rectangular lat long grid of data. Okay? And as before, we can go into the layer manager. Again, we have selected the layer manager is responding to the window that we're looking at here. If I click this, it's the other one. Okay, this is from the other file. So if I go into yeah, it's from the other one. So it depends on the window of the data that I'm viewing here. Okay, as before, I can modify my lat long grid. For example, maybe I want the step size to be of the longitude labels to be every, I don't know, maybe 5 degrees instead of 10. It's operating automatically. Whoops. So I can get more of those in the vertical. Okay. So as we saw before, there's all sorts of things we can do with our grid there. Now, back in the file manager, we again are manipulating two files. Now, I can close this file if I'm through with it. Okay. I can save it if I want to, which wouldn't be a bad idea. If I were to save that, it's going to do this conversion. It's going to create this dim file. Okay, I happen to have already done this. I'm going to overwrite that. It doesn't matter. I'm not worried about that work at this moment, but I just want to illustrate that there is a dim file and data directory associated with this data, which has not been reprojected, and there is a dim file and a data directory associated with the reprojected data. Okay, so we're able to manipulate multiple files in the file manager. If I close that, now I'm only fooling with that. The only windows available are from the reprojected data. Now, I said there were a couple of operations that might be useful. Another one might be to cut down the region of data that we're interested in. Maybe we don't really care about anything outside a small region let's say from 95, 85 to 95 longitude. Those are west longitudes. And maybe from 25 to, I don't know, 32, we'll just go up a little bit in latitude. So how would I crop a portion of this and subset out the data from that? Well, I would go to Raster Crop. I don't think there's a button for this in the toolbar, so I go to the menu for this operation. Okay, crop. Well, this gives us another one of these dialog boxes with sub windows to sort of manipulate. It's previewing the data, albeit in black and white. We can subset the data spatially by if we know the pixel coordinates, but that's kind of hard to do. So we click here to get the geo coordinates. So I said maybe up to about 32 degrees north. Maybe the west boundary would be minus 95. The south would be 25, and the east would be a minus, what did I say, 85. Okay, we're going to sample at the data resolution of 1, but we could in fact undersample the data by increasing that. All right, now the band subset allows us actually to throw away a bunch of the bands that are in the file we are subsetting. So this reprojected has all of these things in it. I'm just gonna, choose not to worry about some of these. I'll leave in the remote sensing reflectance and the chlorophyll, and then I'll just uncheck these as an illustration of how I can limit the amount of not only the region of data, but the amount of data. Now I'm going to leave in the L2 flags, and I better leave in the longitude and latitude because those are very important for the georeferencing of the resulting cropped data. Okay, I never fool with this metadata subset thing or anything. So with that having done, I get a little preview window as well showing me the region. Let's say OK, and boom. Now, unlike the reprojection step, which created data, or wrote the data as it created, this simply creates a file in memory. It's a subset view of this file, but again, the icon is red here indicating it has not been saved. Notice the name is now the source data file name with underscore subset appended to it. And in the rasters, I've only got those rasters that I chose to save in the crop operation. If I double click that, there's the extent of the data that I have. Throw a Latlon window on that. So it goes from 25 up to 32, and so on. Okay, so we need to select this. We need to go to the file menu and save as. Okay, if you're getting tired of this dialog box, you can click here to not show this anymore. But now we notice that CDAS is about to bite us because it has not included in the name the important information of underscore reprojected underscore subset. This is one of the quirks of CDAS that's rather annoying, is it seems to sometimes omit important information, but I can just type that in there. I'm in the correct directory, and I'll say save, and it writes that out. So now I don't even need this reprojected information anymore. If that's all I want to work on, I can close that, keep my file manager kind of tidy. I might want to leave that open, I might not. Okay, but now my layers are strictly the layers in this one file that's open. the band that's being displayed. Okay, kind of cuts down on confusion and so on. But you may need to keep multiple files open to do various analysis and work that you're doing. Okay, so I wanted this tutorial to sort of illustrate both the useful operation of reprojecting data to a map projection and subsetting down to an area of specific interest, but also how that affects our management of data files and DIM files. Okay, so I'm going to close by quitting, and I'm going to go into my file browser, and I'm going to quickly try to find my folder full of this data here, this work, excuse me, that we've been doing. So it's this 2020. So let me list things here. And notice that we have the original file saved as a dim with a data folder, the reprojected file as a dim with data folder, and the reprojected underscore subset saved as a dim and data subset. And so, you know, I don't recommend that you double click the dim file and hope that your computer knows what application to add. I just want to make you aware that the file you're working on in CDAS is this, is saved out as a dim file, and it associates with it a folder full of the data. I mean, if we were to look at that, we would see all sorts of internally stored bands of individual files of each band that's in the file. Okay, but we don't really need to worry about that. We just worry about opening, saving, and closing dim files in CDAS once we have zeroed in on the work we want to do. We obviously started with a netcdf file that we downloaded from the Ocean Color site. So I hope that kind of helps understand the workflow of saving data, saving your work, and not losing any of your work. So I'll stop there.